All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Pull Up Tre Pod. It's a very special one. This is going to be a year in review, and for a year in review, we kind of need a special guest. He's my personal friend. I'm his number one fan.
Wow.
We have a lead NBA reporter, S. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Chilling. Appreciate it. You guys are welcome. Yes, you guys are friends here in the humble abode.
Mansion.
Stop it, man. We're here in Mount Albert, Ontario, ladies and gentlemen. Search it up on a map. Yeah, that's what it is. Appreciate you guys having
Yeah, it took us quite a while to get out here, actually.
me. I imagine.
And on the journey over, we, kind of stewed our thoughts and ideas on the Raptors, and we're ready to kind of unleash them on you and this is what this is basically, right? Is that it's been a year of Vision 6-9, let's say. And there's a lot of thoughts bubbling around what Vision 6-9 is, its efficacy, all that kind of stuff. And we'll start with the guest first. How do you feel about Vision 6-9 at this point in time? Not only as it's worked with the Raptors, but the platonic ideal of it.
Yeah. Throwing me to the fire immediately. Okay, well, just to go off what me and you have done before, you were part of the video that I did about Victor Wembanyama. A big part of that was the 6'9" vision and this vision of just adopting and emphasizing length. I think in general that does make sense as a concept for basketball, to kind of double down on one specific trait, and that trait being length and versatility, and trying to kind of like derive versatility from that one aspect of basketball. But the results, which is another aspect of what we talked about, has kind of changed my opinion on it. It's tough, man. It honestly is tough to look at this season with the Raptors and come out with like a full blown conclusion of what the 6'9" vision should be. But if you look around the NBA, not just the Raptors, you look at the Orlando Magic, the New Orleans Pelicans to a certain extent are doing something similar. Having length, having guys who can guard multiple positions, who can do multiple things on the court, that's always a win. It's always a W to be able to have guys who can do a plethora of things. The Raptors are trying to do that, but they're not doing it successfully, whether it be through injuries, whether it be through a lack of depth, et cetera, et cetera. So as it relates to the Raptors, ... I'm not too sure. As it relates to like basketball, I think I still go with what the point of the video I made was, which I think it really is. We're trending towards that being an emphasis in basketball even more, and length being an emphasis in basketball overall, not overall, but like I guess the emphasis would be on the league itself to double down on certain sizes, especially at like certain positions, like point guard and shooting guard, whatever those positions mean to you, like doubling down on the height for those positions. I think it's clear in like the trends that you see right now too. And I'm kind of like just going at it, but you guys threw me to the fire.
So there was something that we've talked about, many people talked about last season, was that is kind of the chicken or the egg thing, and this season as well, is that if the Raptors have a bad half-court offense and they're trying to skirt the responsibilities of operating the half-court by getting out in transition, pseudo-transition, stuff like that, when you look at a team that creates turnovers and does successfully, but plays a type of defense that's hard to maintain outside of those turnovers, and also doesn't build out their offensive repertoire based on like a structural sense and as far as having the talent to do that. A lot of people discuss that. The Raptors quelled some of those questions by getting the fifth seed, by being a very good defense for a long stretch. But at the game the other night, when I asked Nick about this, he brought up that not exactly chicken or the egg thing out of his mind, but he brought up like, we're not scoring, so our transition D suffers. We're not doing anything that we're supposed to be doing offensively, so the defense suffers. And when a lot of people currently are saying the defense is what's wrong, because we already know the offense is not very good. And the offense, honestly, has been better than some people thought because of Pascal's growth. When you look at this, both of you guys, do you think this starts defensively? Do you think this starts offensively? Where is the point that you try and insert if you're trying to improve this team? Where do you start?
You want to go? Yeah.
I think it starts at the defensive end. The the big thing about this vision is that we knew the offense wasn't going to be good. And with having an elite defense that was going to generate more turnovers and lead, and they were going to have enough size to actually win the rebound battle, regardless of not having a true center. There's been factors, obviously, that it hasn't led to that. Press is one of the best rebounders on the team. He's been injured for most of the season, but a big thing that's been lacking for the team is at the point of attack. You've seen Scotty; had issues. You've seen Fred still be a good defender, but not necessarily the All NBA guy that we would expect. And Gary has an issue where he gambles a lot, and that leads to people getting to the rim. The defense needs to crash, and that leads to open threes and other opportunities. For me, the big pitch was the Raptors being a top 10 defense and that leading to more offense. So if you're not accomplishing that, I don't see a viable option to where you can rely on your offense because that wasn't even a part of the pitch.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like, to your point, I agree it's a chicken or the egg situation because I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think if you're looking at it from okay, these are the cards we've been handed, this is the deck we've been dealt, and we have to kind of go from there, then I do think the defense is the issue. But if we go back and look at how this team is trying to be constructed, then I think it's an offense issue because if they're going in with the mindset of, hey, this offense is not going to work. We're not going to be that great of an offensive team. So we have to have this type of defense that forces turnovers, crashes the offensive glass, wins the possession battle, overexerts itself, et cetera, et cetera. Then by this weird vicious cycle, it kind of makes it so that you have to have a great defense in order to counteract having a bad offense. I think construction wise, if you look back at how they tried to build this team, if they kind of doubled down on adding more shooters. Obviously, they tried to kind of address that with guys like Otto Porter Jr., but I think it goes back to the roster construction itself. If they really wanted to double down on Pascal and what this team looks like around him, adding shooters, adding other, playmakers or creators, or maybe a backup point guard, I think the offense can thrive, and therefore maybe the defense can look a little bit better because you don't have to overexert yourself. You don't have to play as aggressive. You don't have to crash the offensive glass every possession. You know what I mean? You don't have to try and force turnovers every single time. I think like it's kind of a recipe for disaster when you have to bank on those certain traits and then you have to double that down with, okay, we have to make our shots. So it's kind of this, I don't know, it's just to me it goes back to roster construction. But if you say, hey, this is what we've been dealt. These are the players that we have, and we have to go out and kind of figure out what we can do. Then I think it is a defense issue, and it goes back to like, how are they going to essentially optimize this defense so that the offense can kind of float and be okay?
So the question I think is, if you have this platonic ideal of a big man, and let's say the Raptors, whether it's the Raptors needing a big man or whether it's any other team needing a big man, big men are important. But when it comes to the Raptors, do they need an offensive big man to help grease some of the wheels offensively, or do they need a defensive big man because they probably can't get a guy who does both? This brings up the Pirtle question. This brings up the Miles Turner question. This brings up all these types of questions, right? When we think about that, do you think that having Pirtle defensively helps juice that defense, helps them put them in a better position so that they can run out and helps solve offensive problems? Or would you rather a really solid offensive big man who helps crash the glass, let's say, who finishes in the pick and roll, who sets better screens, who provides, some touch and shot making within the paint, and then they get to run back on defense, set their defense, and insulate that big man, kind of like what the Timberwolves did with Cat last year. What do you guys think of that? Do you have a preference?
Nick Nurse has talked about this though. Like even if the Raptors do go ahead and get that defensive minded big man, he said like that doesn't give us a reason to stop being aggressive. If anything, that gives us a reason to be more aggressive. So I'm not sure if the defensive minded big man is the solution. In theory, I guess it would be, but when it comes to this team and the way Nick Nurse wants to approach it, I think it would kind of counteract what we're talking about here, where it's like they should probably be less aggressive. They should probably not be as chaotic of a defense. And that way their offense can maybe thrive a little bit more and they can do a little bit more on offense and whatnot. But I don't know. What do you
I think an offensive center, if I were to choose between like Miles Turner or Jakob Poeltl, I'd choose Miles Turner. Simply because it would maximize Pascal as a pick and roll ball handler. You actually have somebody. The Raptors have really struggled with their big men getting the ball and having to make decisions and get into actual space. Whereas he can punish his mismatch and make it a lot harder for people to crash on him because Pascal's actually has the ability to throw a lob. So it increases his ability and forces defenses to actually make decisions and allow our shooters who are eventually going to shoot well.
Are we sure anymore? Are we sure? I've been waiting for positive aggression for so long. Sorry, continue.
They're eventually going to shoot well, and they'll give them more opportunities and looks. With a more stable offense, that'll allow them to probably play less aggressive and not rely on turnovers to win those possession battles. So I would say an offensive center would probably be the best gateway to maximize your best player. I think that's the most important thing in winning basketball games.
So then when it comes to not only building out the team, but looking at league-wide trends, and we like Miles Turner, Jakob Poeltl, what these guys get traded for. Vision 6-9, we've been focusing on the negative aspects of it mostly. What has been working or what has been failing that you expect to kind of iron itself out and work in the future? You talked about shooting and guys having positive regression and guys actually making shots that they're supposed to, but what the Raptors have done is kind of more similar to the Bucks when they did the big length thing and they had their year where they were second in defense rather than the Pels who have a really unique and dynamic offense with all this length and have managed to cobble together a decent defense still. But when you look at that, what do you expect to start working, even if nothing changes? Or do you think like the same struggles continue to struggle? The room for growth remains the same. Like what's the situation in that regard?
I think what will start working is that the Raptors will rebound a lot better. The big caveat in having being this aggressive and scrambling is that you are able to, as a team, come together and rebound the ball just simply because you have 4 or 5 guys who are bigger than their average position. With them rebounding a lot better, the possession battle will be much larger in their favor. So that will allow them to probably be a better defense in general, just because they're finishing possessions. And then also at the point of attack, there's been a ton of injuries that have affected things, like Fred, Scotty, Precious. Having Precious, you saw that in the Indiana game, even though as he said, he was very tired. Having a special defender who actually can hoard ball handlers allows you to do so much more on defense. So I think a lot of those things will lead to better defense in the future.
Okay. And you?
I mean, like league wide, if we think about it, the emphasis on rebounding is massive, especially offensive rebounding. Like generating extra possessions for yourself is massive. It's so emphasized. I mean, look at what the Memphis Grizzlies have been doing for the last couple of seasons with Steven Adams. Now you have other teams kind of continuing and following that trend of crashing the offensive glass, generating possessions that way, including the Raptors.
What Monty Williams just when he was here for the game against the Raptors, like Joe Wolfond asked him about that. He's like, "Hey, you guys started offensive rebounding a lot," and he said he had an assistant coach who sold him on the idea. They also saw it work with other teams, i.e., the Raptors. He talked about having to try and contain them that night. And Monty Williams also discussed how, along with offensive rebounding, they didn't face as much transition because they were the ones setting the tone by forcing teams not to run out in transition because they help out on the glass. Like there's some that's what I wondered about this Raptors thing was is this them taking advantage of something? Is this them hacking basketball and jury rigging the possession battle and doing all this kind of stuff and then winning at the end of it? Or are they delayed to do something really, daring as far as team building, as far as like play style, and what comes out of that mostly and usually isn't the wins, isn't a championship, but small changes that help form how the league approaches like these strategies. Like the Warriors changed everything and they won, but it was because of talent. The Raptors thrived in a bunch of different defensive sets and won, but that was because of defensive talent. They were daring and they had the talent. Raptors seem to just be daring, and other teams have noticed. Other teams have praised them, but they're 16-21. And while they may very well be changing the league to some degree, other coaches talk about, oh yeah, Nick Nurse did this, and so we started looking at this, but they might just be the scapegoat. Like they tried it, they became a data point for other teams to look at something changing. I'm curious, is that too pessimistic?
No, I think that makes, honestly, if you even extrapolate that into life, there's like, no, I'm real, like there's always the artist before the artist that cracks, right? There's always the painter who never got noticed, but then there's Basquiat. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to go out and give you an amazing example here, but like at the end of the day, there's always the thing before the thing. And that might be the Raptors in this sense.
You're saying singular genius is a capitalist myth, is what you're
sort of like, yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah. Okay, yes. But like, okay, let's look at so you said the Warriors, right? Before that, it was Steve Nash and the Phoenix Suns. Now they had tons of success, and that paved the way for a league-wide trend, right? But when you look at the Raptors and honestly other teams that are trying similar things, the double big lineups, et cetera, the success of those things is what will determine how much other teams copy it. So obviously with Monty Williams, you mentioned, the Phoenix Suns saying, hey, this might work. Let's double down on this. There's going to be a team that cracks the code. I wonder if we already saw that team in the Orlando Magic. Like maybe that's the team that ends up cracking the code because they have all these ball handlers, all these creators, and they've sort of, to put it lightly, they are doing a Raptors-esque 6'9" vision, but they're doing it with guys who, quite frankly, are just more talented offensively.
also a little bit bigger.
And a little bit bigger, a smidge bigger. Yeah, like 1 inch technically, right?
Vision 6'10", yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be that one team that breaks through. I think the Raptors are probably the big L, and then there's the big E that takes over and does something,
So the next conversation is the Fred one.
I don't want to have this conversation.
Yeah. So the next conversation is the Fred one. But quickly before we do that, I do want to ask if we think that Pascal, the singularity of his progression, do you think that created an unrealistic blueprint that the Raptors fell for? Or do you think that just it's tough building a team? Like when Bobby Webster says, yeah, we want a bunch of guys who look like Pascal, and Pascal is the 27th overall pick, who comes in with a very limited offensive game, even a very limited an energy pick, who is now an offensive engine, initiator, all NBA player. You can't really chart that as okay, we'll follow this blueprint with other guys because nobody plays like Pascal. It's a very tough thing to emulate. So I'm wondering if you think that created a false blueprint for the Raptors, or is that also maybe too pessimistic?
I don't think the Raptors are wishful thinking that much, man.
I hope
I mean, for them to say, yo, this one guy did it, so we're going to do it for everybody we see. I mean, I get it, but I think it's also it's a good value. It's a good value point. Like they see value in players like that. And I think the league recognizes value in players like that, or that archetype, right? That 6'9" guy who can defend, he can guard multiple positions, he can create for himself, he can create for others. They say, hey, if we can maximize on that one type of player, maybe everybody else will want our players. And that's sort of what we're seeing right now with, honestly, literally every single Raptors starter is, kind of vaunted by almost every contender. It's, hey, how can we get an OG Anunoby? How can we get a Pascal Siakam, right?
So the question is, Siakam and OG predate the Vision 6'9" thing, right? So are they built under the House of 6'9", or is the House of 6'9" built in their image and nobody can meet that image? It's kind of the idea. Jaden McDaniel still went 28. It's anyway, that's kind of just what I wanted to wonder about. Do you have an opinion on that?
For me, in terms of the entire vision, I don't think the skill sets in place to win consistently have not changed. I think there's just bigger players are doing so, and those bigger players are hoarded higher in the draft.
Yeah.
And that's the big issue that the Raptors are facing right now. You're trying to not necessarily recreate Pascal because he's become all NBA player, but they're trying to get the 95 percentile opportunity from um, very low threshold picks, which are generally like end of bench rotation players,
Right.
which is a very hard situation to deal with and to build your team around and try to construct.
Well, that's why Scotty is such a big part of this because, like, they got that high pick. They got a guy with high upside, massive ceiling, and he fits that image. He fits the 6'9" mold. He fits a guy who can maybe at some point turn into not I don't want to say a Pascal, but like that type of player. Who knows what'll happen? But to your point, like that's exactly it. They sucked a year, and in that year, they found a way to maximize on that and find that one guy who might be able to replicate what Pascal's doing. So, yeah.
Fred VanVleet.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Okay, I'm gonna lay the groundwork for this one. You let me know if I'm being too unfair. Okay, so Fred VanVleet, currently, as I understand it, is for the first time, like during his on-offs were bad during the Tampa season. They're not very good during this season. But when the team is winning, as he said prior to the season, he expects to be paid, he expects to be looked after, all this kind of stuff. Didn't take the extension. We'll test out the waters of the world out there. He's shooting historically for himself, poor from three. The pull-up seems to be fine. It's tracking normally. His catch and shoot stuff has fallen off a cliff. He still does not threaten the rim, except for there was a stretch where he was
It
like,
was a little
Fred Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah,
What's his name?
that was
He
crazy.
doesn't threaten the rim typically like a lot of other high usage guards or lead guards. He also doesn't play make as well as a lot of other guards. However, he still defends better than a lot of other guards, especially off ball, but has a step on ball. That is currently where we sit with Fred VanVleet. That I think the expectation from people what they've come to expect is not being met. But I still think he's a positive impact on the team. But I still think there's a lot of room to be like, this needs to improve, this needs to get better. And especially for his sake as a guy who's trying to get a contract. So Fred, I'm curious where everyone sits on Fred.
I'll let you go next. I'll let you go next. Do you think? Do you
So-
think? Air it out. Air it
So
out.
brave. When it comes to Fred, I think we're kind of seeing like the accumulation of playing all those minutes at such a small guard and having to literally carry the team through a really tough stretch last season. And injuries have caught up, and that's probably led to overcompensation in other ways, and might be the reason why he's shooting poorly now. I still think that he's a good player, and that positive regression will come. I think the question here or for the future is whether we're going to see like diminishing returns over time, and we kind of spoke about it. This Raptor team, in terms of like their minute distribution, are similar to like the Thibodeau Bulls, where they hoard their starters for as many minutes as possible to try to win as
So
many.
you guys want to say the nickname then? I'm just saying, dancing around it, talking about.
Some may call him Nick Thibodeau, but there was one player like on the Bulls that like was really a part of that culture and played as many minutes as possible, and that was Joakim Noah.
Yeah.
He had a really high peak,
Mm-hmm.
which helped carry them through the season,
Mm-hmm.
and then fell off immediately.
Yeah.
Because of that reason.
Yep.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that this is
Oh man,
immediate, but I think we're
witnessing that.
we're facing the same reality, and which is why I have questions heading into later of the season because we're
All right, jumping back in here. I actually, you know, what's crazy because like I wish you guys were like so anti-Fred. You know, I fight with people on Twitter. It's crazy. So people are saying whatever. You know, I'm not gonna get into that, but
We can get there.
I think like what you guys said is not off base at all. He has lost juice as an on-ball defender. He's still incredibly intelligent off ball. He can do the dig. He can still kind of get the crowd in the passing lane, creep, and then try to steal it when someone's doing that skip pass. He always does that type of stuff. The shooting has fallen off a cliff. That is kind of something I wanted to talk to you guys about. Is like, do you guys think that'll ever get back to what it is? I'm sure that's part of the discussion here.
But is it a given? Do you think it comes back 100%?
I'm just saying, like, how many times have we seen a dude, and we have seen it sometimes, but like, how many times have we seen a dude fall off a cliff this badly and never recover? Like that, I guess that's the only thing I have with the shooting stuff is like at some point it has to be a little bit better, right?
I think the question probably more is like last season he was probably like one of the 5 best shooters in the league.
Yeah, maybe the best, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
If he returns to like 70 percentile of that, that's probably a fairly elite shooter, but his impact goes down significantly because of reasons Samson said.
Yeah.
So the big deal to me isn't that we're looking at this season. It's that, and this is the Joakim Noah aspect of it.
Yeah.
Since the All-Star break of last season, from that stretch to the end of the season, he shot 29%.
Yeah, it's been awful.
Threes.
Mm-hmm.
He's shooting either 32 or 33% on them during this stretch as well. We're getting close to a full season sample of this type of shooting. That is troublesome.
A full season is troublesome. I don't deny that. That is pretty bad. But okay, the seasons prior to that,
yeah,
really great sample size for him being a decent shooter. I'm just saying. Like for him to get back to that, to get back to pre-All-Star form last season, I don't think that'll happen. And I think the worries you guys have in terms of contract and how he may look on that next contract is totally fine. And I think that's a big reason why the Raptors probably will listen to offers if there are offers out there in the next couple of weeks for Fred VanVleet. There's no question about that. But at this point in time, would you move Fred VanVleet knowing that there's not much you're going to get in return for a guy who is shooting like this over the last season, who is a small guard entering his, he's 30, going to be 30 soon, right? That's a tough question to ask yourself. It's like, do we keep this asset that might be depreciating very quickly, or do we try to send it out as soon as possible to salvage some kind of value? That's the question that I would pose to you guys. Like, I totally agree. Yes, the defense has dropped off a bit. The shooting has dropped off a cliff. What happens now? Because what do you do from the Raptors' perspective when you're not going to get back the same value you would have if you traded him last year at the All-Star break, right?
So this is like the conversation. It's not even about Pascal, really, because I haven't seen anybody. I mean, you see people on Twitter who want to trade Pascal, who want to blow it up. Yeah. Sure. But most people don't want to trade Pascal. Most people think the future of this team, whatever it looks like, includes him. Fred seems to be the delineation point where people, that's where they separate, because Fred, at least from looking at the way I analyze basketball, it seems like you're not going to get a more impactful player for the positive side of things back.
Right.
And especially, even at the level he's currently at, not close to where he might be able to get if there's positive regression with the shooting. Yeah. You won't get that back. However, if he is truly
right,
like if his career is going in this way where his body's going to continue to take on this toll, and you don't want to be the person left holding the bag, let's say, or you think that there's a small extra piece of value you can get for this because you don't plan on re-signing him, then that makes sense. But if you're trading away Fred, I think you're accepting that you're making the team worse this year at the very least.
And maybe even next year, depending on how your offseason goes. Yeah. Which goes back to the Pascal conversation, though, right? Because it's like, how do you convince a guy who, for all intents and purposes, is probably going to be an All-NBA player, will probably be eligible for the Supermax?
Well,
depending on how bad they feel. Yeah, you're right.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
If he plays for a team that is so bad that he could average LeBron numbers and not make All NBA, i.e., loses him about $40 million.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. Is he coming
then
back?
you get into the conversation of, oh my God, next year Pascal is a free agent, and like, hey, we probably should have been having this conversation about Fred last year when he was. It was tough to have that conversation, but the dude was having an incredible All-Star level season. We probably couldn't have that conversation because of it. The same thing in a lot of ways probably applies to Pascal because of the fact that, like, hey, dude, this team is going in a direction that might not be good enough for you. How are we going to convince you to stay?
Well, also on top of that is that Fred, I think people were talking about his athleticism declining, and I tell you what, everybody would be perfectly fine with the slight drop off, more than slight drop off defensively that Fred has been showing.
If the
shooting,
Yep.
which traditionally ages quite well,
Mhm.
if the shooting stuck around, 16, 17, 41% on catch and shoot.
Yep.
Next year, 44.5, next year, 41, next year,
on
44,
decent attempts too, just saying.
next year, 38, next year, 43, and then the post All-Star break, you get 29, and they get 32, 33 this year. That is odd. And that means, like, for a small guard who, when the Raptors are trying to operate in this offense where it's like, yeah, we go after mismatches, and while Fred can run some pick and roll, it's really helpful that a shooter of his caliber is sitting on the end of these possessions.
Mhm.
And now he's not a shooter of that caliber.
Yeah.
It just cuts the legs off of so many of their offensive possessions that it ends up in his hands, and that used to be like a win. In January of last year, it was a 50% shot for him, a catch and shoot three. 50%. Almost, it's in the realm of being as valuable as a Giannis dunk. Like, that is a super big deal. But he's not shooting the ball well. And so basically, I think it comes down to, do you believe in the shot?
I don't see a scenario where he's a 29% shooter for this much longer. I pray, at least. But you also have to consider the history with guards. Of our lifetime, there's probably a handful of guards who age really well into their early 30s. And his next contract is going to bring him to probably 30, 31, 32, actually.
Mhm.
So, in most cases, unless he's Kyle Lowry, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook for his bit of his early 30s, he's probably going to decline. For me, at least, I don't think that there's. I think we're a bit of an impasse because for him, seeking the most amount of years and the most amount of money makes sense for him. And for the Raptors, who don't necessarily get free agents and need to nail every deal because they acquire talent more through trades,
Yeah.
they need to be able to secure a good deal from him or trade him.
Right.
So I don't see a scenario where he's going to do us a favor. So I would look for offers and see if there's something.
I agree. I would too. I'm not saying. See, I even tweeted this, and people get mad at me because I'm like, wait, how are you defending Fred VanVleet, but also
You named your dog after him, bro.
yeah, I did. No, but like, how would you? First of all, it was 4 Freddies. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Freddie Gibbs, Freddie Krueger, Freddie Mercury, and Mr. Fred VanVleet. But look, the shooting is something that
Freddy Krueger?
Yeah. Wait, you didn't know that?
No, dog.
Oh, there you go. All right, bless.
Wait, you just like those movies, or like he's a hero of sorts?
No. He used to scare the crap out of me when I was a kid. So I just like
Conquering fear.
Conquering fear.
Damn. Okay. Good for you.
Yeah, exactly. But also, it's like Freddie's a cool name. Anyways, when it comes to Fred, I 100% believe that they should listen to offers. I guess my thing is, like, at a value point, like, do you end up trading him when what's the package you're getting in return at this point? That and look, the trade-off might be the fact that, like, in the summer, committing to him for 4 years might be even worse, right? But I think it's tough to swallow trading a guy who was an all-star last year for maybe a first round pick and a young guy. Maybe
So
at that. Yeah.
this is what I'm wondering about. I need to crowdsource this with other writers or something. What the hell is Fred VanVleet's value?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like
As a guy who is on the verge of a contract, who is not shooting well,
at all. Right.
who is showing that, like, he's injured every 5th game.
Lower body
He
injury.
has a bunch of stuff going on. What is that, like a 2nd round pick? Is that a 1st round pick? What is that on the open market? Like, you know, that's the funny thing about this, right? And that's why I didn't back when Pascal was under so much fire, I wasn't saying like, "Oh, you can never trade Pascal because he's too cool a guy and he's so nice, you can never trade that guy." It was like, why on earth? Because the difference is Pascal was under contract for a long time afterwards, but it's like, why on earth would you trade somebody at their lowest value? And you won't give them a chance to prove that, like, hey, things are coming back. So Fred shoot it really well before February.
Yeah, but even then, dog, even then, if like he has this sick stretch of 40% shooting for like a week, does that really convince a team like, hey, I'm gonna do it? And hey,
Honestly, no, because the 5 games before last game, he was shooting 38% on 10 attempts from downtown.
and the
So
value is going up. I mean, the other thing I'll say on the Fred front is like, what about that player option? What if he just opts in? Because I mean, from his point of view, if he goes out and looks in the open market and he's like, ah, this is not what I expected, and he comes back, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna take one. He's done the bet on myself before. He's done the bet on myself before. I'm just saying.
I mean, like not taking this extension was already the bet.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah.
should have stuck the extension. Can also say the Dice Man, really great nickname.
Yeah, it's a great nickname.
Like it's not like there's a word that starts with M that gets used for Fred a lot. It's not really a word we would say here. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's not like really a word you throw around. So the Dice Man, as far as like a slanderous nickname, is pretty fun and like lighthearted. But yeah, I don't know what happens with Fred. And I think the impact, you use the term impasse. I think that's what it is, right? Because the Raptors have so many external pressures to be good.
Yep.
And especially since this is what we talked about on the drive over. Could you imagine?
They had a pod on the drive over.
Yeah. Anybody listening, try not to get too worried about this idea, but it is a nasty idea. You draft Pascal at the 27th pick. Develop him to this point. This is the guy who's hit a championship clinching shot in his career. Over Draymond Green, Euro step floater. This guy won Most Improved Player. He's been an All NBA player twice to this point. He's been an All Star starter. Even if he doesn't make All NBA this year, he's going to make the All Star team. Could you imagine losing that guy in free agency?
Well, him just walking too. Yeah, exactly.
Oh
yeah.
God.
Right.
That would be, there's like the believe in the city, believe in yourselves.
Yeah.
I feel like that would just undercut everything
Mm-hmm.
because he's that guy. Whether you think he's a first guy or a second guy, it's almost as hard to get the second guy on a championship team as it is to get that first guy. Who had a chance at Kyrie? Like 3 teams ever. Who has a chance at these secondary guys? 3 teams ever. And Pascal, even if you don't think he's number 1, there's no way you don't think he's at least a number 2.
Yeah.
And that's a silly binary discussion, but it's a discussion people have. So
Well, okay. Given what happened in Tampa, right? Given what happened, what's happening this season with him potentially losing out on All NBA if they go downhill, right? And given the fact that he will be a free agent in 2024 for the first time, he has a chance to kind of gallivant and see who wants him.
talk to me nice.
Do you? Yeah, exactly. At this point, like, do you entertain the idea of? I don't want to say it out loud because I don't want it to happen.
Wait. What? Wait.
I'm just
What are you gonna say right now?
You know what I'm gonna say. Look, I've tweeted it 1,000,001 times. The Raptors front office has to make every decision from now until the summer of 2024 with the idea that Pascal has to stay. That is like the thing they have to do. But they know what's up. They know that the man is probably not the most happy person in the world right now. At some point, man, I'm just saying, like,
Say the word.
he might have to look and see what's out there. I'm just
People.
I'm just saying he set up the table. I'm just here as the messenger. No, like really though, really. At some point, like it's hard to swallow, but given what you said, him just walking out the door is 10 times harder to swallow, right?
That's crazy, bro.
I'm just saying, like,
I did not expect this.
Yeah, I know. It's a turn of
That's a good take.
It's a turn of events.
It's a good take for the entertainment of it. I don't think you try and trade Pascal, man. No.
I agree with you, but I'm saying, given everything you just personally laid out, how do you not, if the offer is massive, if the offer is like whatever you could imagine, Rudy Gobert style offer, more than Rudy Gobert style offer, how do you?
You want to trade Pascal for Rudy
I don't.
Gobert?
Oh yeah, clickbait had put it up there. No, I'm just saying in general, like if the cards are aligning in a way that he's going to test out 2024, like.
So if Pascal says I'm out of here,
Yeah.
trade me, then like sure,
Yeah.
However,
He hasn't. Yeah.
I don't know if that comes around, but if the Raptors are in a position where they have to punt on Pascal either to trade him or they lose him, that is a colossal failure of the front office. I think people would finally be like, okay, there's no juice in the front office after thinking it is the juiciest front office out there. Like it's like a handsome front office. It's a cool front office. It's the front office that does things in other markets in the world. It's like
shakes things up.
They won a championship. They did it all. If they lose Pascal, Tre, thoughts?
I don't think that's a scenario where you can ideally let Pascal go.
No,
like comparatively to other stars who have really like asked out, they usually are lacking like talent at the top. The Raptors don't really have an issue at the top, I would say. Like you have Scotty, who you would assume entering his third year in 2024 that would be taking like a substantial leap.
Yeah.
Which typically players are like around his pick range do. And then you also have OG, who's shown ability to be a great secondary player off of him. So I think even if you were to trade Fred and take a slight step back to either A, get more draft capital, or B, add more balance to the team, I think just simply through like internal development of Scotty and OG, who are especially OG, who's shown improvement every single season, that will probably balance itself out and allow Pascal feel more comfortable in the direction. And also, there's a good chance he makes the All NBA team and gets a Supermax.
Yeah.
Not many players have turned it down.
Look, all I'm saying is like if we're going down this like rabbit hole of he might not make All NBA and he might not be Supermax eligible and by the way, we're going to trade the guy that you've been building with since your rookie season and by the way, we're also going to take a minor step back in your contract year and develop these young guys. That's a hard thing to convince a player. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I have a question. It's hard to put these questions into like binary, but I'm going to try and do it.
Okay.
So let's say you can trade a first round pick for a center, or you can get a first round pick for Fred VanVleet. Which would you rather?
This is the Sean Woodley question. This is the. Would you rather be the 16th pick, or the 8th pick this year? Really?
The ratio.
Yeah, the ratio. Yeah.
Sorry, Sean.
Yeah. The ratio. But no, I mean, it is kind of like a similar question. I would personally, given what we look at for this Raptors team right now, it's probably trade Fred for a first.
Good man.
Yeah. It's something. Look, man.
Can we zoom that camera in over there?
If I'm saying this, if I'm saying this out of all people, you guys probably know that this is something that's poignant. Like the man. Yes, I understand that he is entering a contract year where he will. He's entering an off season where he's probably going to get the last big payday of his career. Does he end up getting that payday? Does he end up getting it from another team? I'm kind of curious to see what kind of value he even gets in the market right now. If it's a first plus maybe something else that can fill that up, I would look to entertain that because like what Portland did last year, where it's like a small, let's maneuver this way and point the camera this way instead type of thing, I would entertain that idea because it still keeps your core of Pascal, it still keeps your core of OG and Scotty and Precious, and you can kind of build through that and figure out what happens from there. Otherwise, I don't know.
Portland is what comes to mind for me as well
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
just because of Dame and Pascal being comparable in terms of impact, I suppose. And like
Right.
OG, OG is probably a better piece than I know there's like Simons people, but like OG is probably a better piece than Simons. Scotty. But yeah, they did man, Portland did such a good job of just kind of
Yeah.
retooling.
And they did it when, like, right after they signed him into that supermax. So the Raptors have a little bit more of an advantage salary-wise because they don't have that supermax number on their books yet. So,
But
like,
also OG is more expensive than Simons, for
that's true.
example.
That is true. Yeah, yeah.
But Grant is more expensive than Barnes.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, something's gonna happen. Trey?
You want Miles
Is
Turner?
is
You want
Trey
Miles Turner or you want
is
that
Trey
Orlando first?
short for trade? Okay.
There is no way you can trade a pick for any player. The team hasn't shown enough confidence where
Oh, so okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
the team hasn't shown enough where you can believe in throwing another piece that's going to lead to them getting past the first round. So if I were to choose between the two, it'd probably be Fred. I honestly think with losing his impact, the team will be obviously worse for the first season, maybe two. But you've picked a guy in the top four and have put him up and made him think that he's going to be the guy that propels us to another level. So if that does happen, where ideally that impact gap is going to be filled, and OG getting better will do that as well. The major issues I think with the team is that there's been such misses around the margin that has like exacerbated Fred not playing well. Um, Gary having a slow start to the season. They have no margin for error because you pick Malachi Flynn, you miss in the second round.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, so actually, before we get into that, I'll say my opinion first.
Go ahead.
This is both a reflection of my thoughts on the team and how highly I rate Precious Achua. If Precious Achua cannot make this team respectable as the 5, then the difference between he and whatever center you're trading for, I don't
Insert
think it's
whatever.
going to be that big. So I think you'd have to say that I
Trade.
would exercise the other option
Doesn't want to say it out loud.
provided.
Okay, I agree, and I think we all agree here. Like we all said the same answer, but the question becomes, and you mentioned this with Gary. It's like, do you maybe look to trade both? Because that's another guy that people have mentioned a bunch in trade rumors.
Nabil texted you, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he told me, get it done. No, but like, again, we're talking about value. That's a guy that probably has more value than Fred VanVleet right now, especially because he's younger, especially because he's going through a pretty decent shooting stretch over the last couple of weeks, whatever you want to call it. So, is there something to be had there where you trade both?
They have a similar value right now.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. He went down on the value spectrum. Gary's probably sort of.
Gary's making his slow climb, but he's also on that expiring.
Yeah.
Because Gary will not be taking his option.
No.
We discussed like, Gary's not taking his option. Would yeah, I would entertain packages around Fred and Gary, but it's completely dependent on what's coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have anything in the ballpark?
No, I have no idea. I mean, people have brought up the idea of like, oh, Minnesota needs guards. So, what kind of deal works there? And obviously, the big guy in the middle has been brought up as a potential guy. I don't think that's something that Minnesota would entertain this season. But, I don't know. Just something along the lines of packaging those two together to maybe recruit something that's better than just a first round pick or, get you some young guys in exchange.
That was I did that piece with Caitlin Cooper where we were kind of talking back and forth, and she had mentioned like, well, the Pacers have like extra bigs and extra guards, and the Raptors have extra wings. Like, is there something to be done there? But it sounds like we don't want to trade any of the Raptors' wings.
Yeah.
We just want the good guards and centers. I'm scrolling up to see if I can try and find Nabil's Google Doc of all his trades.
Right.
And most of them include Gary Trent Jr. So I'm sure we'll have
You brought up
options.
an interesting one though, the Clippers, because they have an excess of young interesting
Terrence
players.
Smith.
Right. And like they have their pick available to them in however long from now, 2029 or 2026. I don't remember which one it is, but I don't know. Fred VanVleet is a Kawhi Leonard guy. Gary Trent Jr.
Wait, Fred is a Kawhi guy, you think?
I think they're I don't know. Okay, actually, yeah, you might be right. You might be right. I'm
gonna disagree on that point.
Yeah,
but I definitely Terrence Mann. You can't trade based on just like the personalities.
Yeah.
Patrick Beverley went
to the Lakers.
Right? If Russell Westbrook doesn't have the cachet, Fred VanVleet doesn't have the cachet. Even though Fred and Russ are both dealing with different types of like having less value or less impact than they're used to, but yeah, I do really wonder what happens with these guys, because the Raptors, it could be the case that they're not very good going forward. Maybe some people think Precious saves the season. Maybe some people think Precious makes them respectable over a certain stretch. I think that may be more realistic. But if you're just respectable and you're sitting on top of a Gary contract, a Fred contract, Siakam looming, OG looming, and you see, I think Gary, you can look at his game and see like his progression is a slow crawl, and I like it, but you don't see like this big explosion with him coming.
Yeah.
Maybe an OG, honestly, after this year, I think you can expect a slow crawl as well. But the big explosion that some of us were hoping was coming, I don't think you can bet on that either. In fact, you almost closed the book on it.
Right.
We kind of have an understanding of what he'll be. He'll get better. We have an understanding
of like what the range is.
Yes, what the range is. Scotty, you don't know. But those guys you're keeping in-house. What you do know is that Fred and Pascal are not leading a team. They can't drag them.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they did last year for sure. Fred in the early part of the season, Pascal in the latter half. But you know that these guys can't drag a team.
Tough.
I don't know. I think the major question is like the paths of them like flipping the season over on its head is Precious plays better. They continue to play the starters 35 plus minutes to win those 5 to 6 extra minutes that other teams aren't playing their starters to win more games. To get out of the play-in or even to get to the first round in general, is that worth it though?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Is it worth it to you?
No.
What if I were to tell you like, okay, a la Rudy Gay trade, okay?
Yeah.
Somehow they end up moving Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. They get a bunch of these young pieces back, maybe some first round picks, and somehow, some way they scrap their way to a play-in spot, okay? They scrap their way to a first round series. Would you be happy then? If it's like these young guys instead?
Yeah, that's totally different. I think the major probably issue I would have is that they probably potentially shorten the career of like Pascal or OG if their potential peak to get to one round, because we've seen how Fred has looked the last season. We've seen it with other teams having a similar story. So the major issue for me is just making sure that the long-term health and making sure that Pascal is at a certain level that aligns with Scotty's trajectory.
Right.
And staying there for a long period of time.
Baseline, you're more comfortable with trading the Raptors' proven but diminishing asset in Fred than you are trading a pick to try and get another proven asset in like a center or like a combo guard or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm with that too. Tough. This is like
they were supposed to be good.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be good.
I remember our like preseason pods talking about, can they flirt with like a top 3 seed?
For like 2 weeks, it looked good.
Yeah, it did.
Pascal, they came out, they beat Cleveland. He started, popping off. it's the people who listen to the Pull Up Tre Podcast know that we were the first episode that we did quite happy with what was going on, and we're like, damn, this is good. Pascal kind of being this good changes their trajectory. It lifts the ceiling a little bit. Who knows what happens with Scotty? OG looks good. And then the bottom fell out of everything.
Yeah.
Some of it due to injury, some of it due to, the collapsing nature of their defense, which brings us back around to Vision 6-9, I guess, which will be the last thing we talk about. Just, do you think that the Raptors should continue on this path? That's it doesn't have to be a yes or no
Yeah.
at all, but it can be.
I will say no. What would you say?
I would say no.
Oh, okay.
So I'm famous for context and adding it. Coaching takes. But I'll tell you this much. Even when they started doing this, I said I don't think this is the way you team build.
Right.
I still believe that now. I think that you have to get good players, and good coaches figure out how good players fit together and style.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think style dictates basketball. And the Raptors, whether they're just kind of tying this up and saying like, oh, this is branding. Like they got Scotty Barnes, they had OG, they had Pascal. They're like, we'll use this term. People ran with it, obviously. We're currently running with it. Is this just good marketing? But, like, is that the case? Or did they believe it? Yeah. It doesn't really matter because this is where we are.
Did they believe in their own sauce? Did they get lost in
was
the
there hubris?
I think they saw like a market deficiency where there's these players that aren't necessarily you can get into lower rounds, and if you hoard those players together, that's going to lead to wins. And you saw that last year. Most teams don't have 4-6-9 guys who are going to crash the glass.
Yeah.
Do we think that they didn't believe in Pascal to get to this point?
100%.
Yes, 100%.
Because their drafting strategy indicates very long development programs.
Yeah.
And then Pascal, actually, I think that's the easiest answer,
Yeah.
is that the Raptors chose a path that looked like it would fit Scotty Barnes. And then Pascal became one of the 15 best players in the league. And
like, oh yeah, we have this guy still.
And you look at that and you say, man, Scotty can be a really great player in the future. He might be great. He'll probably be great. But even in that greatness, he might not be this good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the crazy part about it.
Yeah.
And so suddenly now it seems like, oh, it's a problem that Pascal is so good. When in reality, it's not a problem at all.
It's a good problem to have. Like, it's one of those type of things.
If everybody else is playing well. If things keep up. If when you're the 5th seed and everybody talks about how returning players and having your rotation return for the next season is supposed to indicate continuity and a good record, and the studies they've done on it statistically indicate that will be the case. Yeah. And then everybody gets injured, and then it's just not the case.
Right.
And then you're bad at things you used to be good at, and you're waiting to see if it turns around.
The one thing I'll say on Vision 6-9 Vision 6-9, the one thing I'll say on that is that in the NBA and basketball in general, when you focus on one aspect, you kind of negate yourself of everything else that's happening in the game. You look at like the Houston Rockets in that Warriors era, right? And they just said, "Hey, man, we're gonna do."
That was a fun team.
It was so cool. I wanted it so bad for them.
Imagine in a different universe if that team won a championship, how different basketball would look right now. And I think in a similar vein, it's like, look, that team tried to be like, we are going to do this and this only, and this will be the only thing that we do, and we will thrive in it. They were this close to actually doing it, but I don't think you can win like that. I think the NBA playoffs and basketball in general has showed that like you have to be able to do a bunch of different things, and if you select one certain thing that you're going to be good at, you will always get beat by people that can do multiple things. And that's it.
This is the thing about the Raptors too, and the marketing aspect of it. They're not a versatile team.
You said it a million times.
Yeah. And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, they can do anything." It's like, no, they can do like 2 things. Even on offense, they do like 2 things, and we see that. And it's not even like just Nick Nurse. I think that Nick Nurse is a good coach, especially coaching his roster. coaching for wins. Now, I have problems with the way he discusses his players in media. I have problems with the way that the Raptors' health, many different Raptors' healths have been handled, all that kind of stuff. Is that his fault? Is that because he knows a lot less than the medical staff, all that kind of stuff? Who knows? I have problems with him. That not like actual problems, like but I have qualms with some of the approach. But as far as like he's coaching the team to try and win, and I don't think that he's losing them games really. I think that the roster is losing them games.
Yeah.
And the way that the roster is built is losing them games. And I think that the inflexibility has more to do with roster than it
the
does
coaching.
with Nick Nurse.
Agreed.
And like that's just the way it is. It's tough. While still saying like Nick, I'd like you to be better at your job, just the same way you want me to be better at mine, I suppose. I'll say, for anybody who listened to this whole thing, you rock. Thank you. You might then be interested in coming to a live podcast that S and I will be participating in. I'm hosting. Lewis and I are hosting, and then S and like a slew of other people are guesting. There's some surprise guests as well, and it's February 7th, right before trade deadline. So hopefully some spicy conversations.
Oh God, I just
It's
forgot
that-
about. I forgot. About
Yeah. You're gonna have to advocate for Fred to be traded all over again, and it's
Maybe
at
just during the show.
yeah. It's at Rivoli, and it's at 7 p.m. It costs $20 for a ticket. It comes with a free drink. Drinks are expensive. They're like around like I don't know, like $7-10. So maybe it's a $10 ticket. If you're an All-Star subscriber, then it's only a $10 ticket. So if anybody wants to do that, feel free. There's also on January 29th a 3-on-3 tournament that I think is very close to being full up. If it isn't, but anyway, check that out. It's the 10th annual one. This is besides Oleg, who you've seen on the YouTube channel. This is the three. We have a team.
Winning team.
yes, sir.
The winning team
I've
apparently.
lost what, one game? One
game.
singular game? Yeah.
It's tough, man. Anyway, if you want to participate or even watch, some people watch. Simu Liu was at one. Maybe other famous people will show up.
Yeah.
Maybe famous people. Come to that. Any final notes, parting shots, fellas?
For me, I generally think that there's going to be some sort of middle ground. I feel like we're hitting like a bottom tier outcome of what this team would look like, and there's going to be some sort of regression to what we were thinking. The question is probably, is it too late?
What a great way to end. We're almost
This
40
is-
games in, and it's like, is it
We're
too
talking about the
late?
Raptors and climate change, dog.
Oh,
Yeah, man.
yeah,
I mean, I don't have really anything positive to add to that, other than the fact that I appreciate you guys coming here all the way to freaking Mount Albert, Ontario.
mansion.
Stop that. And yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's cool to kick it in the humble abode to be with y'all. So thank you.
Humble does a lot of work there. Listener, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the video because that helps. Subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, subscribe over at raptorsrepublic.com. You'll get all of my written work, all of Lewis's written work, which I think, I hope you enjoyed this, but I think my written work is the best thing I do typically. Not better than this.
Trey was about to put the
Only present company, all my other podcasts are not as good as my written work, but the podcasts with Trey are significantly better than anything else I do. Yeah, do that. If you're listening on the podcast channel, please just continue listening. And thanks for listening. Letting us chop it up with you. That's it. I hope everyone enjoyed it. This is the first in-person podcast.
Yes, it is.
Since
Since
I
when?
think the third reaction podcast I ever did, which I did at wait. It was at an Airbnb that I had rented out in Toronto, and Lewis came over, and we were like handing the mic back and forth for a reaction podcast, and that was in the year of the championship, 2019.
Damn.
Our holy Lord. Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you.